All right, good morning. This is Youngstown Stock Channel. Joe and Kelin filling in for the MLO Bros today.
Yes,
yeah.
on Friday the 13th.
Yeah?
Did you notice that?
Mhm.
You didn't even know, did you?
I absolutely knew.
It's Friday the 13th. Ooh, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo.
Share with me why you feel Friday 13th is not any different than Thursday the 12th.
So since I was a kid, maybe teenager, have good luck on Friday the 13th.
Okay.
It's always a good day. Now, it's most likely a self-fulfilling prophecy at this point because I've told myself that, like, I remember it started, I came home from school one day and I went up to my bedroom and my mom had cleaned my room, which like never happened ever. But it just like, oh my God, my room was so clean and organized and nice to start the weekend. And I thought it was so great. And I remember saying, thank you, Friday the 13th. And since then, I feel like I have a really good day every Friday the 13th.
Okay. As with most superstitions, they are bullshit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like I'll purposely look for good things now. Like like you should do anytime, retrain my brain to, even if it's just a typical Friday and nothing was different, I'll almost sort of look on the bright side of everything in order to still say, oh, I have good luck on Friday the 13th. It is. It's bullshit.
All right. So here's what human beings do. And you could actually use this as a tool in your tool belt. So psychologically, I want you to say, name a food that you eat.
That I eat?
Yeah.
Chicken.
Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to make a new superstition about chicken.
Okay.
You're going to say, every time I eat chicken, I feel fabulous. And like the first couple of times, but you not only just saying it, but actually believing it. There must be something about chicken that makes me feel fabulous. And you repeat that cycle, because what we do is, as human beings, is we try to categorize and put things in a box when we notice patterns. Like pattern recognition is part psychological, right? And that's the placebo effect is a real thing. If I gave you a sugar pill and told you it did something, your brain would release chemicals and believe you that it does that thing, and all of a sudden you would make the reality of that thing. We're talking a scientific level. Mm-hmm. Now, historically, when something of significance happens, we attribute the significance that it must have been something that mythologically, like something special or magical.
Mystical and
exactly. We like that kind of stuff. And so when something happens, what makes the number 13 so unlucky that they won't even build a 13th floor, right?
Yeah.
Or there is a 13th floor.
But it ain't good.
They might not number it correctly.
Yeah.
But the 14th floor is the 13th floor.
There's a scary movie, I think, called The 13th Floor.
Yeah. So anyway, scientifically, superstition is bullshit. But you can't sort of like minimize the psychological effect and what human beings are capable of creating when they believe something to a certain effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so name some stuff that you know that that happened that made 13 significant in the real world.
The number 13?
Yeah. Famous events that 13 was attributed to something the 13.
I don't even know.
All right, I'll name you a couple.
Okay.
Because so for instance, the Jesus story, right? There were 12 apostles.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a 13th apostle, right? A 13th guy that came to the meetup. Do you know what his name was?
No.
His name was Judas, right? So the 13th guy was Judas, who is responsible for the.
I thought Judas was one of the 12. I was wrong.
Judas. What did I just do there?
Judas.
Anyway, and so the and then significant dates like what was the Catholic, the military, the Catholic? It's in the lore of conspiracy theories. Knights Templar. The Knights Templar.
Listen, I'm not as smart as you. I don't know these things.
Okay, so the Knights Templar in like the 1300s, on the 13th, the military of the Catholic Church were arrested, right, and murdered. Okay, so the 13th appears again, historically. What are the 13
There's a movie, 13 Ghosts.
Yeah, these are movies. They're using I'm talking origin stories here.
I don't know origin stories.
Okay. My favorite Norse god, Loki, right? Do you know Loki?
I've heard the name.
Okay. So Loki was basically the troublemaker god.
Oh.
And in Norse mythology, all of the gods, the 12 gods, were hanging out in Valhalla, and Loki came in, which would have made him the 13th god, and he convinced the god of darkness to kill the god of goodness, right? And shot an arrow, killed the so again, this 13 thing, the 13th apostle, the 13th god, like you see this happen over. Now, that's us constructing the significance of the 13. When you acknowledge that something's happening, you add attribution to it.
Yeah.
So, and so, yeah, all bullshit.
What about the number 3? Like, don't people say, the like Trinity. 3 a.m. is, where like demonic things happen because it's mocking the Trinity and all that.
Yeah. We do that a lot. And if you believe in it, then it's probably true. And if you don't believe it, then it's probably not true. So it's one of those arbitrary things. You just get to choose to play or not. I will walk under a ladder and know that it's just a freaking ladder. I will break glass and just know that it's just a piece of glass or a mirror. And
I won't, just in case. No. Just in case.
See, but if
I can walk around a ladder, I'm going to do it.
That is making significance of a belief of something. So to you, it is true. And whatever works for you. Want to carry the lucky rabbit's foot? So be it. It's kind of dumb, and I'll tell you it's dumb, but you can believe whatever you want to believe.
Do you believe people can be hypnotized, or do you think that's sort of them giving into the idea?
There's some validity to it. I'm a big, I study the subconscious mind, and if you find different strategies for some people to tap into the subconscious mind, there's some stuff there. Most of it is theatrics in play for entertainment value, but there's some validity to the science.
Or people that volunteer to be hypnotized and they believe they're going to be hypnotized, so then they start acting a certain way. Maybe not actually.
When you suspend the conscious brain and you're just interacting with the subconscious, it's a different deal. So it's one of those things where there are some instances, almost like the people who read futures or whatever. Most of it's bullshit. And it's very rare to come across someone who actually has the skill that can connect with the subconscious. If it sounds like science, it's probably legit. If it sounds like wrestling and WWE, it's probably not legit.
Do you believe in things like spiritual healers? Or do you think people that claim to be healed,
bullshit.
Is it placebo to them, you think?
Probably. Most of it. Like I said, there are exceptions. There are people that are truly gifted in this. But once they're saw as gifted, everybody wants to be a god. So they emulate it and they do parlor tricks to make it seem like they're that. But it's like magic, Magic's not real either. I sorry, spoiler. Magic's not real.
This is an interesting topic because it's making me think of all other examples of like just weird little things that I'm like, is that something or is it me? Like, for example, just a small, very, very minor example. I am a big fan of my current chiropractor. I love her. Mm-hmm. I think she's great. And she doesn't do anything super out of the ordinary of any other chiropractor I've been to. But when I go to her, I feel very relaxed. Every single touch feels nice. Somebody else can come in and has in her office and do the exact same thing, and it's still good, but I just don't feel something. Like there is like a, not to sound hippy dippy, I don't know if it's like this energy from her or maybe her touch is just ever so slightly different from someone else's and it's just very soothing. I don't know. There's something where like, yes, I'll see Dr. So-and-so today because they're available and they're going to do a great job too. But if I can get her, something about her, I like just melt off the table and it's just good. And I'm like,
is she hot by chance?
Is she hot?
Yeah.
I would say she's a pretty woman. I wouldn't say she's like, oh my God, you're hot. Like I could look at a woman and be like, she's hot. I'd say she's pretty.
Okay.
You think that's it?
No. It was a data point. All I'm interested in is data point.
I don't know. There's just something about like she's just something in her like touch or the way she touches is just like, whereas someone else do the exact same thing, and I'm like, okay, that's nice. That's nice. That worked. That helped.
All right,
That
I'm
felt
starting an OnlyFans channel where you're going to talk about a pretty girl touching you, making you feel
Are you
good.
enjoying this conversation?
I'm just a bystander.
Listen, it's not like that. It makes me feel relaxed.
Well, you're lighting up a little bit, and
literally
you're putting an erotic tone on something that should be just benign.
Do you get massages? Do you like massages? Some people don't like massages, but like, you know, when you get a massage and you're just like butter, like you're just like, nap time. Now it feels like nap time. That's how I feel when she's done. Like I could just fall asleep. Okay. I'm like, no one else is able to do that.
Science would test it out and take all of the different elements that put you at ease and make you feel good and whatever, and see if it was just the fact that something you don't get to experience often gets done, and your brain and body produces chemicals that put you in a state that had nothing to do with the specialization of chiropractic. If you take each one of those elements, you could probably replicate.
Well, yeah, and it's probably when I go there, I'm very tight, I'm very locked up. There's something probably protruding in my neck, and when that eases, my body is like, chemicals, relaxation.
Yeah, you can do that without going to the chiropractor, but you know, most people want to believe in the mysticism, and so they do we've been doing it through our cultures for all time. And the absurd ones we call attention to, like, hey, we sacrifice babies, right? We put it on the altar and we sacrifice the baby and let the blood drip down the stairs, and then good things happen. God. So the mysticism, that must be causing that.
But listen, it's not mysticism. Do you believe that we as living beings give off energy?
What do you mean? Frequency? Yes.
Okay. So don't you find it interesting that, like, if you get massaged by someone, it feels great. But if you yourself do it, you got nothing. You get nothing from that. Why is that?
I'm gonna put visor on your face.
Yeah.
Right. We're gonna do the placebo test,
okay.
the Coke Pepsi taste challenge or whatever.
Yes.
Put the visor on.
Okay.
And everything that you see is going to be suggested to you rather than it's going to defy what's in reality. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take your pretty masseuse and I'm going to put.
She's not a pretty masseuse. You're making it weird.
Listen, is she a masseuse?
No, she's a professional.
Is she massaging?
Doctor.
Is she massaging you?
I mean, there's a little bit of pressure.
Okay. The
not
pretty,
massage.
The pretty toucher. Okay. She's touching you and she's pretty. So I'm gonna basically put the visor on you when you walk into the office. There's gonna be a guy named Earl who's about 4'8", right? Little overweight, right? Doesn't emanate any kind of smells, but you're not gonna hear Earl or you're not gonna see Earl. Okay. In the visor, Earl is gonna become your pretty toucher. Now you're gonna lay down, and the voice when Earl talks, it's gonna pipe her voice in.
Okay.
And when you're gonna think it's Earl, and Earl is gonna do everything the same way that she does. That would be a really good test to see if you're convinced that it's real, then it is real, and it's going to be the exact same experience. That would put in contrast whether or not it was her energy or it was you convincing yourself that it was her, and that would be a good way to test.
Yeah, I think she just has like the perfect amount of pressure. I don't think it's like this energy from her. I think she's just good at what she does.
Earl is going to replicate everything. They're going to test the pressures, the placement. It's going to be identical from a feeling standpoint. The only sense that you're going to get is the touch, and then everything else is going to be provided by my virtual reality visor. The speech, the words, everything.
I have found that I could watch something because, like, I love massages. I wish I could get them more often. I love them. If I'm watching something about someone else getting massage, I almost can feel relaxed just by watching it.
Okay. All psychological. Yeah. That's why all of this is bullshit. You do not have to go and, buy into the mysticism in order to enjoy the benefits of.
Listen, she has this little activator that she just like coosh on my neck. And I'm telling you, that's not bullshit. that shoves something back in where it goes, and it is amazing.
Okay. You believe what you want to believe. And I will push against it every single time. All right, let's talk about like news items. We got Friday the 13th out of the way. So go have a great Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
In spite of what people will suggest that is
it's not unlucky. It's going to be lucky.
It's lucky.
Yes.
What do you want to talk about first? Padilla? Want to talk about Mr. Padilla from yesterday?
What's going on with Padilla?
Christy Noem was up at the podium giving a press conference, and Senator Padilla came through the door, and he had some objections.
Yeah.
And started screaming and yelling at the person at the podium. And of course, I call them the Dramacrats now. Right?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, the Dramacrats now are saying, arresting the opposition senator, right? This is authoritarianism. This is a hammer looking for a nail is all this is, right? Because you can, again, scientifically substitute anybody acting and behaving that way, and they would have received the exact same treatment from security.
Physically removed him.
Yes, exactly. And so let's just say there was a reporter, and it wasn't time to ask questions. They got out of their seat and they started yelling. Security is going to take that reporter, regardless if they're a journalist, out to the hallway and remove them from causing a scene of disturbance.
During Senate hearings, sometimes protesters come in and start yelling. They get removed.
So anyway, the game that we play is, do Democrats really know this and are just making something of it for the theatrics and the drama of it? Or they really don't know. They're so bought into their delusion that they think that it was a concocted scheme, that if any opposition leader came through that door, we were going to tackle them and we were going to put them in the gulags of government, right?
Yeah.
Which is more likely? Either you're stupid, right? Or you're nefarious. This is a game we play on this show on regular basis.
Stupid or nefarious.
So I think they're nefarious, and they're that hammer looking for a nail, and they want it to be an authoritarian thing so bad that they'll sculpt and massage on it until it becomes as authoritarian as they need it to be.
Do you think that we had talked before about how the Democrats sort of, after this last election, amped up the emotional appeal to people because their policies weren't getting them anywhere, their ideas weren't getting them anywhere, and so it became very emotional about good versus evil, and they're the good guys, and we got to push back against the bad guys that are just going to be these tyrants. To me, it feels like just an amped up version of that. Is they're like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We got to amp up the emotions and make it look like we're fighting back against some tyrant, evil, whatever.
Do you think they're doing that on purpose? Or do you think that, like, let's just say all the Democrats, we just serve them nothing but soy, get their estrogen up, get their drama up, get their emotion up. So everything becomes a dramatic event where we have to overplay it, make it into something that it isn't. There's going to be a point where we've wrecked what, your reason and logic so much that you don't even know that you're being delusional and out of sorts and non-intelligent, and you're just a theater major rather than a theater major soy boy and soy girls.
Yeah. And I saw someone yesterday shared that story we were talking about yesterday about the pregnant woman that was in the hospital because of the ICE agents coming in. And they posted this news story. I think it was NBC was the source. And she's saying they pushed me and basically manhandled her. And she even crouched down to protect herself. And they kept pushing her. And that's how she got hurt. And I started to comment on it and say, I actually heard a totally different story with this. And was she trying to barricade a door? Was she trying to blah, blah, blah? It's not like they just came in and she was over in the corner cowering and they pushed her. And then I stopped myself and I went, this is futile. They're not going to listen.
No.
And I just quit typing and I went about my day. And that's how I know that there are people that are just too far gone in one direction.
Yeah.
That it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter if you have proof. It doesn't matter if what you want to present to them is a more logical explanation. If they don't even consider it or want to hear it, then it's like, you're it's just too emotional. And I think that is the only game plan the Dramocrats have.
Yeah. But, and that is also an effective strategy. We talked about immigration and bringing immigrants in that would likely to vote Democrat would be a strategy for your side, right? So the Democrats to get more support is to feminize everyone and make everything into a drama scene.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, I think the Democrats at this point probably have started lactating with the amount of feminization that has happened. I mean, look at the major leaders in the Democratic Party. Like, they're not pumping weights. There are very few of them that have masculine logical attributes.
Yeah.
They're all drama queens.
It's interesting if you go back, and I don't even know if Gavin Newsom still has his podcast. I heard he sort of gave it up, but I don't know if that's true or not. Yeah. He sat down with Charlie Kirk, who's conservative. And they had a discussion, and Charlie Kirk told him, all you guys do is make victims. You create victims just to have victims, just to fight victimhood and push back against something, which then creates more victims. And that's your whole game plan. That's all you all do. And he sat there and he listened, and he's like, okay. And then it happens again. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's all you got. And I'm not talking about all Democrats, just as though I don't think all the people on the left are the same way and all the people on the right are the same way. I'm not saying that. But you do have people that are far to both sides. And when talking about the far left, that is all I ever see. There's nothing like, hey, guys, this policy isn't going to make sense and this is going to be detrimental to the economy. Maybe that's one kind of Democrat. But once you go so far left, it's like, they're evil and they're hurting people and they're mean and they're racist and they're Nazis and they're breaking up families and they're pushing pregnant women and they're hurting. And I'm just like, if you don't have something other than that.
Well, think about it. Like, when you get visitors, like, let's just say you take, a friend, a woman who's menopausal, and you give them a bunch of wine and start talking politics. They will go to the furthest depths of drama in every issue because the emotion just bubbles out of them. Gavin Newsom, every time he gives a press conference, he's crying and tearing up. This is all evidence that we feminize politics to such a point. Right? The biggest voting block was white suburban women. So the appeal is to bring white suburban women into your, voting for you and supporting your policies, is to have politicians connect with your largest voting block. And they did that in spades. I don't know how they accomplished it. I don't know if they're doing hormone replacement therapies or we're just doing the soy thing, but that is literally what we've done to the Democrat Party.
That's so interesting because in my experience, not that I have a very large circle, but the white suburban women that I know, because I'm in that demographic, are all more right-leaning.
They are now because it's crazy. Women do not... They do not gravitate towards feminine leadership in men. They in their soul, they know that they play the role of emotionalizing things to get things done, and they want that part. Everybody wants that part. But when it comes to the command structure and the execution and the logic and the reason, that's the purview of the masculine. And so with those two working together, you can get anything accomplished. You devise a strategy and have the reason for doing it that has an emotional appeal, and then the execution, you get the thing done without having published it all with using the emotional energy, and without that recognition. It's not like we want all of our leaders and our military people to be overly feminized, right? You don't want that in leadership.
Yeah, and I think there's an appeal in men showing some emotion and showing some care, but when it's so far that now it's illogical. Like, now it's whining about something that isn't even rooted in reality, I guess. Like, you're finding a victim now. It's like,
do you remember that Elizabeth Hurley where she was the devil?
I remember it. I don't know if I ever saw the whole thing, but okay. I know what you're talking about.
So it's Brendan Fraser. He makes a deal with the devil. He can make these demands to Elizabeth Hurley, and then she'll do them. But she's the devil. So whatever he says, he gets it technically what he asked for, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, there was a scene, I don't even know if it was the same movie, but I always connect it, where a lady asked for a sensitive guy, right? And when she's sitting down, he's just this teary, spineless, whatever.
Yeah.
And it was the most absurd version of what she asked for.
There's an episode of Friends where Rachel starts dating a guy and he's played by Bruce Willis. And he's like this hard ass and he's kind of scary and he's a tough guy. And then she finally like gets him talking about his childhood and emotion. And then he can't stop crying.
Yes, right. So that's
she's like, can I have the old guy back?
Exactly. So when you say, I want some emotion, right?
Yeah.
You want some emotional consideration. You don't want the leader to be emotional. And, one of having a woman president, this topic comes up when we considered having Hillary Clinton or having Kamala Harris. Do you want somebody who is emotional in a leadership role, right? Do I think that some women can pull it off where they can be logical and reasonable and, and put some of the emotional tendencies on the shelf? Sure. I think some can do it, but it's going to take some effort because you have to acknowledge that you're going to have a superiority in the emotional department. Men are going to have the superiority in the logical and reason department.
Yeah.
Cooperation is the only way that makes that happen. Because you can see there, if you take Trump, for instance, there's not an emotional moment that I can think of, right? So if you take a non-emotional person and you just take logical rule, you will get shit done. But it will feel bad along the way because there wasn't any consideration to also market what you're doing. It's like, we're going to do it and it's going to be great and it's going to be the best thing ever, right?
Because if you were always just led by emotion, like you said, either nothing would get done or poor decisions could be made. Like anybody that has ever had to fire someone, you may feel badly about doing that. Mm-hmm. There may be some emotion behind that. But if you don't, it could be detrimental.
That's why I say you can't get it done because of the way you feel about it. And the emotional game that's played is if I'm in politics, right? When I want something, I'm going to make an appeal to you to make you feel good about it. And I'm going to manipulate you into doing it. But then I don't have the fortitude to actually do the thing because it's hard and it takes reason and logic. So I'm done. I just have to keep buying you into something. So the opposition does the exact same thing. If I want you to be against something, I'm going to make you feel bad about it. And I have to concoct emotional connections to why you should and shouldn't do anything, not evidence-based and merit-based around it. So that's where, if we would just acknowledge that the two sexes have innate gifts about what they're good at, biological gifts, and we have cooperations between those two gifts, we could get everything done.
Yeah, you need the yin and yang.
You absolutely do.
Juliet said something, it's up higher because I think it scrolled past. Go back down. Go back. Nope. I lied. Okay, right there. You cannot deny this is an unprecedented time in the country's history. The drama has been created by Trump. When we react to the drama, we get blamed for it. There are times when fighting back is necessary or let it all go to hell. Do you think this is unprecedented times?
Listen, this is the drunk menopausal aunt that's in the corner.
No offense, Julie.
That is making it dramatic. So it's not
unprecedented time.
You're saying that. But remember, when you get to the emotional side, it goes to the extreme level of and everything. It's the most dramatic. So it's the most unprecedented thing.
Meanwhile, you could literally list all these things about past LA riots and campus riots.
You're making a logical argument with drunk menopausal.
A Democrat that deported how many illegals that were here and talked about doing it. All these other people that have done all these things that we're seeing today. It's not the first time we've seen anything like this. It's not. We've seen it with Republicans. We've seen it with Democrats, but we're in unprecedented times caused by Trump.
Every time, I'm going to call that a Julie statement today. Sorry, Julie, I'm picking on you.
Yeah,
again.
We love you, Julie. We're just
when you say something like that, you have to do that every time. So when I read your words, I'm picturing
and clutch the
pearls. Has never happened before. Every time, right? So if that is an emotional argument, right? If you're making a logical argument against an emotional charge, like an emotional sentiment, right? So you're saying, oh no, it has happened before. So unprecedented doesn't. That's a logical argument. Julie is not convinced. You have to make an equal emotional rebuttal to that.
And now, if somebody were to say, these are difficult times, these are stressful times, we have some emotion tied to it. There's a lot going on right now. It's not all good, all fine. But when it then goes to the level of, and it's one person's fault, and we've never seen anything like this before, that's when we're like, listen to what you're saying and go actually find proof of that.
Since you didn't, I challenged you and you just grazed right by it.
What?
You are the emotionally charged one here in this little,
yes.
right?
In this.
So I want you to do the opposite of what Julie did. She said, it has never happened before. Now I want you to go the opposite, and I want you to make an emotional on the other side. I'll do it for you if you're not going to do it.
What do you mean on the other side?
All right, I'll do it. So you can see what I'm talking about.
I want to see you do it.
It happens every day, right? In the middle is where the logic is, where you make the argument that it's not unprecedented and it doesn't happen every day.
This is the appeal regular.
It happened yesterday.
It's daily. It's horrific.
So we're going to bring both of us back to the middle and say, if there's something we do want to happen or something we want, let's deal within the reasonable, median between the two. Okay, let's move on, because I'm sure there's more of these things to mock. Joe, have you ever met a steel-spined woman? Let me introduce myself. I absolutely have. And I'm not saying this is not all or nothing argument, right?
Yeah.
Can there be people that have a tendency to do something to operate outside of that tendency? So if you have somebody who's athletic, right? Could they have areas? Thank you. Could they have areas where they show non-athleticism?
Yes,
for sure. Does that make them less gifted in their athleticism? Doesn't detract from it at all. So can you have a woman who operates in an environment where men dominate for their gifts? Absolutely. Yeah. Can you have men who operate in, nursing, for instance?
Yeah.
Nurturing and empathy is up
there. You can have a woman construction worker and a male,
but it's not
nanny.
all or nothing.
If
you take the aggregate of who is a better teacher, I'm going to say a woman is a better teacher every single time. If I'm going to say, an executive, who's going to be an executive better every single time? A man. You can cross and be better at something that you don't have a natural gift by creating the skill set.
And would you not say that all or nothing mindset is a bit emotional?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. All right, let's keep going. Kamala or Hillary will never be president.
If you had to pick between Kamala or Hillary, who do you think would be the strongest?
Neither. I would check out.
Really?
Oh, they would be. Both of them would be so bad.
Do you think they would be bad in different ways, though?
Yes.
You think Hillary would be tougher?
Corrupter. If that's the word.
Corrupter.
Yeah, she is corrupt. She is so connected to all the mechanisms of corruption. It would just be on, now that she has that podium, it would just be on steroids. And then Kamala was a dingbat, just a incapable leader. So all she would be is a figurehead for all the bureaucrats that would be in control, because she would not be capable of leading.
So the evil mastermind or the puppet.
Exactly. Oh. Yeah, that's what you would get. They would both be so terrible. Like, I don't even want to contemplate that. Logical rule, his ego is his. Yeah, I would say if I were to pick the things that are most disruptive for him getting things done, he is dramatic in what Julie said. His ego. Listen, he says everything is the greatest. You don't think that the exaggeration that everything the great, you believe that everything is the greatest, is the best plan, the biggest.
This is the greatest it's ever been. There ever will be.
Yeah.
And sometimes he'll even say, like, that was the worst, the most awful, the most detrimental.
But that's the only emotional side that he knows, is having those exaggerated things that pamper his ego. And so, yes, if you want to take a segment where he has emotionalized things, he gets people bought in based on exaggeration rather than drama.
Yeah.
Let's see. The Los Angeles Mayor Bass is horrible. Like, she's, and that's another one I can't figure out. Is she ultimately delusional, or is she a a liar. And I hope it's that she's delusional. I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt that she actually believes the things that she says. Dennis said, no, when you respond emotionally to the media gaslighting you, it's your fault. Let's see, Julie, tell me when we have ever had this chaos every damn day. I think that it's always been there. And it's almost like when you go into a restaurant and you experience it from the presentation side, you feel like it's really put together, and you work in the kitchen, you feel like what real chaos goes in to structuring and giving foundation to the polishedness.
Yeah.
I think the media opened up because it's not controlled by Democrats anymore. So we get a real sense for shit that's happening that we never knew was happening before. And so the transparency is the chaos was happening, but it was hidden before. And now the chaos is still happening, but we get to see it every single day. So
who was in office during BLM and George Floyd riots?
Trump.
And was that long ago?
Mm-hmm.
Dang,
that was
went by
2020,
fast.
I believe. No, then that would have been, I don't know, timeline wise. If you're
was
listening,
Biden in office during all that?
I don't know. I think that was, I don't know. Correct me in the chat. You guys know this stuff. So
Because again, that would have been another time in history that it was multiple days of chaos.
Okay, I have lived a lot longer than both of you. I have the lived history to base my knowledge on. And then Joe says, think about the Chicago 8 and May 4th, 1970. We've had some despairing times for sure. She wouldn't let the crisis go to waste, and that is a strategy. That is for sure. Jeff says the fact is Democrats will blame everything on Trump and ignore that Biden let all the millions in without vetting, and now Trump has to fix it. Dems are in denial. But, Republican, they don't do it to the extent, but they would be doing the same shit. If it happened on somebody else's watch, they would totally blame it for the emotional appeal that try to tag it on the other person. That's just a political maneuver.
Because I've always said one of the most annoying things about Trump to me is that he can't give a public speech without bashing Biden.
Yes.
And at this point, I'm like, dude, we're how far in now?
Yes.
He's gone. He's now been gone. Let's move on.
Equally as annoying.
Yes. If you have to make everything you're doing or saying about how bad somebody else was instead of what you're doing, to me, that's just as bad. That's like, move on and show me what else you got.
Yep. Yeah. And the contradiction, like I always put it in, if it were a reverse situation, if it was, how you would be responding if it were the other guy. And I stopped doing that because it's fruitless. You know exactly what it is. Politics means that you blame the other guy and you never take responsibility for yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So if it happens, would the Republicans be doing and saying the same thing if they can hang their hat on mysterious evidence that it supports what they've, sort of like said about something?
Yeah. So Jeff says Trump was in office, sent guard to Seattle. So here's something interesting, because you could look at that two ways. One, all these riots seem to happen when Trump is in office. Is Trump causing more problems? Or all these riots happen when Trump is in office. Is it the Dems' only mechanism to fight back and make him look bad?
Would all of these Soros groups or all of these unions that are orchestrating these rallies and riots, would they do it when Biden was in office?
Yeah,
I don't think they would. So if you're making these sort of connective, the red yarn that the detectives put, and if you're drawing the red yarn, you can see what was missing. Like, for instance, the Dixie Chicks. What's the Green Day? All right.
Yeah.
When Bush was in office, their songs were all about the oppressiveness of the government. When a Democrat got in office, all of a sudden, all the musicians and artists, all the same shit was happening, but all of a sudden they were less inspired to be outraged by it. So why was that? So you got to almost connect it and say, if all the Dixie Chicks would have been mad, no matter if it was George W. Bush or Clinton or Obama or whatever, because it was more about the principle of what they disagreed with, not who was in the leadership position when they expressed their outrage. And that's why I was like, okay, well, it wasn't that you didn't like war for oil or whatever you were doing. It's that you opposed a guy and you used your platform to go after the individual. So
yeah, I agree. Dennis, says it was 2020, a few months after COVID broke out. There you have it, Kelin. I think Dennis means every time we have someone in power that Dems don't like, we better cause some drama.
Yep.
Maybe not cause it, but they're certainly enjoying keeping it going, I think, or amping it up.
But here's the warning, though. So we're a pendulum in this country. We don't know what it means to just have homeostasis, be right in the middle, average things down. We go to the extremes, and you can always bet what's going to happen when you pull the pendulum too far in one direction. You could picture what the opposite part of that pendulum is going to be. Almost 100% chance. Okay. Einstein, one of my big mentors, the opposite reaction is assured. And so if you're like, oh, we've got this advantage and we're going to pull it back here, you don't think if we overly feminize everything and we bring the women into the picture and put the priority of decision making from a women's perspective, if you're to guess what's going to happen on the other side of the pendulum swing, it's going to be an over masculine, over, whatever the perspective of all logic and reason. The only way to avoid that is to say, hey, I can do it and I have the support to do it, but let's just bring it to the middle and not let it swing to the other direction, because there won't be a pressure to pull it back in the other direction. But we are not sophisticated or intelligent enough. When we're in power, it gets the best of us, that we pull it in that direction. And then the more outraged one side is, that pressure brings it pendulum back the other way. And now it's more outraged in the other direction.
Yeah.
So plan it that when you're doing it, that is going to be done to you.
It's like when you start veering and you overcompensate, you have to
100%.
everything in your body, not to just, but just
exactly.
Easy. Yeah.
Exactly. So get ready for it. It's going to be, I'm looking forward to it. Not the fact that it's going to perpetuate into more chaos, because the more of that energy you put in there, the more of that chaos is likely to happen on the playing field.
Yikes.
Okay. Israel, Iran. Let's talk about it.
I don't know if I know a lot about this.
Okay. Last night, 8 o'clock at night, Israel struck nuclear facilities in Iran.
Ooh, I have not heard about this.
So playing this out, Iran's been a troublemaker. They've been funding terrorism all around. They've using these proxies to, to hurt United States interests, Israeli interests. They want to wipe Israel off the map. I mean, that's on their mission statement. They don't like Israel and they think they should all die. They're all Zionists, an evil regime, right?
Yes.
So they spend all of their money on making the world miserable when it comes to Israel. They're a problem. Now, Obama, every administration I can remember, all the way going back to the Iraq War, was to sort of contain Iran through sanctions, through negotiations, to treaties. Nobody can really get a handle on these people because they lie. Like they don't follow through in their agreements, and they want. So let me take a step back before I fill you in on the rest of the details.
Okay.
So there are a lot of countries that have nuclear weapons, right?
Unfortunately.
Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, or at least if they have a nuclear weapon, it's been a very recent advancement, right?
Okay.
Who's to say that Iran shouldn't have a nuclear weapon if everybody else does? Like, who's the boss? Who's in charge of permitting a country to either have a nuclear weapon or not?
I don't know.
Like, can we, in the United States, are we in charge? Do we get to tell other countries?
Does NATO have a say, or I don't even know?
NATO is a participation agreement. In order to be part of NATO, you have to follow NATO's rules.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is, if you don't want to follow NATO's rules, check out of NATO, and you're no longer under the guidance.
You don't have to be.
So there's only so many things that we can do to you, that if you're not doing what we want you to do, there's only things. And there's maybe 5 countries in the world that can sanction Iran enough to get that to change it. They can make them miserable, right, to control them. So we can siphon money off of them. We can not give them money. We can give them things. There's all kinds of different strategies to get Iran's decision-making any different. And they are a terrorist organization. right? So we're dealing with terrorists knowing that they're never going to follow the rules. So we only have maybe 40% control on what they're capable of doing to other people. Eventually, they manipulate their ways around the rules, and then they become dangerous again. And then we have to refactor new rules. So anyway, Obama signed an agreement with Iran that gave. This is so stupid to even explain. So Iran is one of the most oil-rich nations on the planet, but they want energy produced from nuclear rather than oil. And it's not because they're environmentalists that they don't want to burn oil. They have unlimited, infinite supply of oil, right? So what other reason other than creating weapons-grade uranium would there be to have a nuclear industry at all in Iran? There would be none. Yeah. Everybody knows it. They only want nuclear, not for creating electricity for their citizens, because they can do that in 1,000 easier ways. They want nuclear silos. They want nuclear enrichment for nuclear weapon. They want it. They're going to get it, and nobody's going to get in their way. Now all they have to do is pawn themselves around until they can create enough cover for themselves until they get enough material to make nuclear weapons. And a nuclear Iran cannot happen. Yeah. So anyway, so the inspectors for the Atomic Energy Commission, or whatever that acronym is, they basically peek into what Iran is doing and seeing if they're following the rules of the. And this isn't an agreement. I don't think there was an agreement with any kind of teeth, but they came to the conclusion Thursday that that Iran was not following the guidance from the rest of the world. They were outside of the bounds of the grade of uranium that was being created, not necessary for just electricity production. And they said, or at least Israel said, that there were 15 weapons that were possible and capable for what they have right now within the next 30 days. So that's the stage that's being set.
Yikes.
Okay, so they've created it. They're either, and I heard another report that said they had 9 nuclear weapons right now. So they were already at the stage where they had materials that could create, or they did create a bomb. So anyway, that's the stage that's being set. And so the day after the Atomic Energy Commission said that they were not compliant with the rules that were set forth, Israel, multiple waves, destroying the nuclear facilities, the nuclear programs, and killing scientists and operatives, like military operatives. That's what happened last night at 8:00. Israel bombed Iran.
That sounds like a good thing. If they're getting rid of their nuclear stuff.
Well, failure in every degree, if you asked me.
Oh, no.
Number one.
Oh, no.
Number one, if they got close enough that they had this, then this was sort of like last resort, right? If we couldn't negotiate, or the world couldn't negotiate to stop that from happening, then it was war was the, we didn't, I'm going to say this flippantly, but I don't think we tried hard enough to make this not happen this way. Right?
Yeah.
Was anybody under the illusion that they were following the agreement? Was anybody in the illusion that we didn't give them money to formulate this? Like, we set the stage for this to happen, with the ultimate end was we were going to have to blow up their nuclear stuff. Like,
we were going to have to basically go to war or get involved.
Yeah. And I don't know that I can even float alternatives. Like, could we have send in operatives to sabotage this? Sure. Maybe.
I mean, we saw Trump try to negotiate with Ukraine and Russia. Did he try to do anything with Iran, or be like, hey, dude?
It's what I'm saying. Like, what good are having diplomats and people who are negotiating these things if the effectiveness is we just get war in the end anyhow? Yeah. I think on the surface, they're preaching we don't want war, right? And then if everything on the ground says, yeah, war is going to happen, like, I want to see a bigger approach, a bigger cooperation between countries that don't want war to make it not happen, rather than let this play out and say, oh, I guess we're going to have to bomb stuff. Like,
It's Dennis.
Dennis says the Stuxnet virus was a good try, didn't work. This is where they infiltrated and put viruses in the networks that controlled the nuclear stuff to try to sabotage from a software side.
Oh.
And yeah.
It didn't work.
It worked. It probably delayed, but that's really all we've been able to do is we haven't been able to stop it. We've just been able to make it harder and make it take longer. But Obama threw fuel on the fire by funding it and giving them a bunch of money, thinking we're going to pay a terrorist. They're just going to use it for what we suggested rather than just funnel that money right into development where they fetch more scientists and do it faster. So that's where we're at right now with Israel. Iran overnight sent 100 drones towards Israel for an attack, and they all got shot out of the sky. So there wasn't anything that connected. But from the United States' position is that we are distancing ourselves from being involved at all because Iran knows that if they hit us, I mean, we were the supplier of the weapons. I mean, everything, the bunker busters, some of the Patriot missiles, some of the air defense systems, all came from us. So Iran's looking at it like, this isn't just Israel. Israel might have launched the attack, but all the armaments came from the United States, so that we're being grouped in with this. And Marco Rubio.
Oh, you're saying we gave it to Israel?
Yes.
Oh, I was thinking we gave something to Iran. But
well, we probably did. Jeez. No, I'm just
yeah.
But anyway, so Trump and Rubio were creating that distance and making the threat: do not hurt the United States. Do not come after the United States. If you hurt any of us, it's game on with us. So those kind of incendiary things like almost make it certain that Iran now is going to come after the United States because Iran makes most of its appeasement money from being a threat. And if they aren't a threat, then nobody throws money. Like, you notice if you put on a calendar how often Iran steps up and starts misbehaving, it's almost lines up with when they should have exhausted all of the last appeasement money that we gave them. They rattle the swords, we give them a bunch of money, and they shut up for a little while. But the argument is that if they would have just used that money, if they wouldn't have used that money to get closer to a nuclear weapon, then Israel wouldn't be bombing their nuclear sites right now. So it's such a dumb pursuit. This war thing is a dumb pursuit.
Is Iran a rich country or no? With all the oil,
but they're stupid. If they
had
all that oil,
most oil, you'd think they would be a wealthy country.
You think, but they are a terrorist dictator organization that is sole thing on their mission statement isn't prosperity and making a bunch of money. It's the destruction of Israel. So everything they do lines up with their mission statement to destroy Israel. So if I get money, I'm funding Hamas and Hezbollah rather than developing oil and worrying about exports and being a good community member.
And is it just religion based?
Yeah.
They just think Israelites or Israelis are evil.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah. So, I mean, it would be great to have a different leader in there, have some influence in some of their neighbors. There's a lot of things that could work, but because our system, every 4 years, we get a new person in there. Each one handles it differently. We're not effective at keeping those coalitions together because it gets, you have the Obama mission statement was different from the Trump mission statement. The Trump mission statement was different from the Biden. And so we can't keep a hand. If we're the good guys here and if we can't get on the same page, what it means to be a good guy, then we can't be effective at managing that. We can't be the boss of telling him what to do because we can't hang in there long enough to be consistent on it.
So do you think pretty soon we're all going to be fighting, much like with Ukraine and Russia? Our general public, is going to be like fighting about what should be done with Israel?
I don't know.
Is that going to be the next social unrest?
Maybe. So you want a conspiracy theory?
Yeah.
I floated this out there. So everybody knew that this was an inevitability, right? And Israel strikes on Friday. Okay.
Yeah.
Friday, the U.S. military is holding a military parade where they took all of this weaponry and moved it into Washington, D.C. for the parade. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, this is to show of military whatever, but this is also the stuff, if you were defending the capital of your country, you would need all that stuff there. And if it weren't for a parade, like if people saw you maneuvering military equipment into DC, they'd be like, what's that? What's going on?
Nothing to see here, just a parade.
So could it be that this was, we got to concoct a reason to get all this military equipment into DC without spooking everybody? Let's hold a military parade, and that will be our excuse and reason.
Ooh, maybe.
Anyway, just flooding it out. Conspiracy theory. I don't know anything.
My husband saw something online last night that said, oh man, I can't believe it's already riot season. I haven't taken down my Ukraine decorations yet.
All right. Julie says, prior to the Israeli bombing, Trump said we were negotiating with Iran. He asked Israel not to interfere. I guess Benny doesn't pay much attention to Trump either. But I mean, if really we have, there's less of a danger zone to us than proximity with Israel. I think that they have to take it more serious, because if Iran has 9 nuclear weapons that they could use right now, and they packaged it up and handed it off to Hamas, how quickly could they hit Israel? So if your window of time to take care of this is now, the United States isn't as worried about that Hamas handoff than Israel is. They have more to lose if, it gets in the hands of those proxy terrorist organizations. So I don't doubt the fact that this was maneuvering at the last deadline that they could, while the material wasn't ready for explosion at this, at that level. So
who's Benny?
Benjamin Netanyahu. He is the president of Israel.
Oh.
Dennis said, I've had the idea on the back burner too. Maybe there was a credible threat to the homeland. No doubt. And that's sort of like, as a citizen, would you want to know about those threats? If there were, like, think about all of the chaos and the, Jack Bauer in 24, remember how many things that he saved the United States from and you never knew it happened?
Yeah.
What if we brought all of that stuff to light? You would think that we're in much more danger than we were at one point, when historically we've probably been in danger a lot of times and it never made the news.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, part of me is kind of grateful for that ignorance, because I think if the American people knew about more danger, there would be more chaos and more issues and more whatever. I think in some situations, it's probably for the best that we don't know everything. I mean, just like, I'm so glad my husband is out of the military now with all this. But just little bits of information I would get over the years about different things. It'd be like, there's so much that they deal with or they handle that we never caught wind of, and we never had to see anything bad happen because it got handled before we knew. And it was like, oh God.
Yeah, but like with what Julie said, where have you ever experienced so much chaos, right? My argument is there's always been this chaos, but there's been an incentive to keep what was really happening away from the public. But with social media and the transparency of this presidency, we put it all out there, so you get a glimpse of everything. You're seeing how the sausage was made.
Yeah, if there's anything that is new to this time in this era, I think it is more cameras, more media coverage, more social media coverage in everything. President meets with someone at the White House, we're all watching it live. President calls a meeting for someone else, like, we watch them come in. There's a lot of this sort of playing out in front of the general public now than I think there used to be. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. Maybe a little. Maybe it depends on how you look at it. To me, that's the only thing that's different or unprecedented, is I think we're just seeing more and hearing about more than we did in the past. I don't think it's anything crazy new.
But there's a responsibility with that. Like it's like I'm going to share everything. Like if we were in a relationship, like we just started dating, and I say, I'm just going to tell you the truth, right? I'm going to tell you everything, right? You think, oh, this is really good. I'm just going to get the truth.
I want the truth.
But then I start telling you the actual truth, and I'm like, you're looking kind of tubby today, right? And then you're like, maybe I don't want as much truth as I thought I did. I want the good truth. Like I want the stuff I want to hear, but don't tell me all of the truth. But there's a responsibility on your side that you have to now be willing to hear things that you don't necessarily want to hear and see. And you got to be able to stomach that.
Yeah.
And so transparency and free speech and all come with a lot of, stipulations that you got to be able to handle.
My husband used to tell me this story all the time many years ago. He was overseas. I can't remember what country he was in, but they were attacked. They were, I don't know, on like a river or something. They were in the middle of something, and they started to get shot at. And it was the people that they thought were helping them. Natives of that country that were working with us basically turned on us and started to attack us. Luckily, our guys fought back and killed them before anybody was seriously hurt. He then showed me a newspaper that came out of the story that said accidental friendly fire on the Americans' part killed whatever country these other people that were trying to help us. Mm-hmm. And it was like, that's not what happened. That makes us look bad. Why would they not tell the truth that we were defending ourselves and they turned on us and they weren't good guys trying to help us? And he said, he's like, this was easier for American people to swallow than what actually happened. They would rather hear, oops, we made a boo-boo and move on than, oh my God, we are in such danger. We don't know who to trust. Even those acting like we can trust them will then turn on us. That was too scary. And they changed the story completely. And I went, I'll never again trust a media source. Like we all think, oh, I heard something in the news and you think that it's true.
Right.
Not necessarily.
All right. Julie's my best friend here right now. We're flooding some conspiracy theories.
Yeah,
I love these, Julie. Thank you. Here's a conspiracy theory for you. Isn't it strange the day after Musk alludes to Trump and Epstein and fixing the election, chaos erupts in LA and now the world?
That's what I said.
But we predicted this long ago.
Yeah.
The Greenland, the Panama Canal. There's always some kind of disruptive news cycle that keeps the media aiming in every direction.
I just said that the other day. I said, let's talk about the timeline between the breakdown of the Musk-Trump bro ship and the riots in California.
Yep.
And why is it that all of a sudden peaceful protests became extreme violent unrest while everybody was like, ooh, look at Musk and Trump taking shots at each other. And oh my gosh, the Republican Party is falling apart. And oh my gosh, they're so immature. And look, they can't even get along. And this. And then it's like, oh, look over here. Cars on fire. Buildings on fire. Chaos.
Israel's bombing Iran. So now the weekend that would be the dominating news cycle of riots is going to be the bombing of Iran. So you can keep saying like, now they're not paying attention to riots. Will the riots be as big when the cameras aren't fixed on the devastation because we're all paying attention to the nuclear strikes or the strikes on nuclear sites in Iran?
Yeah.
But this is so cool. I love this kind of thinking because now you think, is it all orchestrated where that was purposefully done? Is it coincidence that they all seem to escalate the chaos in different departments to keep us distracted? That's the conspiracy.
I mean, there's so many things. Yeah, like fighting over Ukraine and Russia, which then transforms into fighting over this, which transforms into fighting over that. It's always like, is there a logical explanation to move from one to the other? Is it orchestrated that way? I trust nothing. And no one.
No, and all of you listening, trust nothing.
Because now I'm thinking the military parade is just getting protection in DC.
And it's worthwhile exploring as a possibility. I'm not saying that's what's happening because I don't know, but it's a possibility.
I mean, look, way back months ago when we were talking about the drones. Why is it that our government had such little information about major drones in the sky? You guys know, what's in our airspace. You know what is going on in things. You can't tell us you have no idea about a SUV-sized drone
flying over New Jersey.
Yes.
And notice that they gave us that explanation, right? They're all legitimate. They're this, and we were like, oh, okay. And we all moved on. Not saying, hold on, that's not good enough. Keep coming, more information.
And then it just sort of stopped.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
They got our number. We got the attention span of fleas. We can only look 7 days into the future. And if they can get you to forget by creating a distraction over here, we'll do it. It works every stinking time.
It does. It does. Even if you think about it, how many times did just Epstein in general come up and then something else happened?
Mm-hmm.
And you know what's interesting about that, which is another maybe reason why this could be orchestrated, is every time something else comes up, there's questions surrounding it. It's never anything that's cut and dry. You know, like here's some drama, so let's have riots. And one side is saying it's not that bad, and one side is saying it's awful, and one side is saying that it's handled, and one side is saying it's not. Where's the truth? And then something else will happen that is also questionable. And so you would think that if something just naturally happened, it's clear, it's clear cut. We know what's going on. You report facts and you move on. But it's never that. It's always something that is questionable to keep the attention longer and to stir up unrest.
Yeah. And I know these two things are passion projects for some of you out there. And, you know, the hit on Iran from Israel, the ICE riots that are going around in the country. And so Kelin and I aren't beholden to any of that. We don't have to take either one of them serious. We can go to 30,000 feet, look down, and kind of dissect like what this means in the landscape of all things. So we're not bound to be able to just get all too passionate or too serious about what's going on, because we're not in control of this stuff anyway.
I know. And we are pretty middle ground. Like anytime I hear someone say, oh, you're so right or you're so left, I'm like, well, clearly you heard a small portion of our conversation then, because we're really not. Some days we may take the side of the right if that particular instance makes more sense. And then other days we can make fun of the right and say, all right, the left had it correct in this instance, but they're being dumb here. Like I like when people are able to be open-minded enough to, like you said, sort of take a step back and be like, oh my God, look at what's happening, rather than just sticking to one side and staying with it.
Have you ever listened in on a space over on X?
A what?
A space? Spaces? Space?
No.
No?
I don't even know what that, I don't know what you're
So
talking about.
it's sort of like a voice chat on X where someone can host a space, and then you can have speakers that do either lecturing or they're talking about a topic. And then you can have like thousands of people listening in on what's being said on the stage, virtual stage.
Kind of like a seminar, like a live.
Well, so what happened? Like I like to listen to opposing views before I make up my mind on something. I want to know what one side is saying and the other side, and there's going to be elements of truth in both sides.
Yeah.
So yesterday, when all this stuff was going on with Israel and Iran, I joined a space for Palestinian, Iran supporters, people who were passionate about that Israel was the bad guy and Iran was the good guy. I want to listen what they were talking about, what they were saying, what their grievances. And you expect that when you're listening to someone who you disagree with, that they're all just going to be morons and idiots and ill-educated, and this is all just more political. But these were actually very intelligent people that were convinced, just like you and I would be convinced about something. And where their grievances are, why they're so mad about it, why they believe. You get a lot of information when I couldn't talk on that stage. All I could do was listen, fly on the wall to see what it really was. And then I can determine, like, do I give those people a pass for being so wrong? Do they have that right to feel that Palestinians were in the right and Israel were in the wrong? But I wasn't there to be convinced on one side or the other. I want to know what Iran is saying so I can find out who really the bad guy is. Because if I don't, I think Israel is in the high ground position on why they're acting. But what if I'm wrong? What if Israel's lying to me and I don't know enough about the story? What's Iran saying? And then I can make a judgment based on, do I think Iran is being as forthcoming as Israel's being forthcoming?
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like I sort of did that when we were in the thick of Russia and Ukraine, because obviously I think in the States, there's this very strong sense of we need to support Ukraine. Putin is a madman. He's a murderer. He's a bad guy. And that could be true and have some truth to it. Absolutely. But I'm like, but what is going on? Why is this happening? And I have to admit, when I did some digging, while I don't agree with what Putin's doing and I want them to have peace and I want things to stop, I get why. I get why he did it. And there are reasons that I saw there other than just, I'm just a madman who's hungry for power.
That's exactly right. It'd be easier if those people were, outright, overtly just partisan or whatever, but not. They're making arguments that they're convinced that their version of the truth is the right version of the truth, and you're the bad guy because you're not seeing what they're saying. It's not that I'm not seeing it, I'm just not believing that what you believe is true.
Yeah, I do that, and I do this with my mom all the time. Like, she'll say something that some politician did or said, and she'll be kind of like snarky about it, and she'll be like, oh yeah, because blah blah blah. And I go, why did he say that? What do you mean? Tell me why he said that. What did he mean by that? What was the instance it was surrounding? Like, why would he feel that way? Well, I don't know. Because they're a jerk? No. Here's why he said it. Here's the context in which it was said. And I bet you now feel a different way about it if you are open to more information.
They're not.
No. Typically, it is just, I don't care. I don't even want to know why.
All right. Carter said you had a president that never talked to the media or the people, and now you have one that looks the American people in the eye and tells them what's going on, and his cabinet does also.
Yeah. Whether you like it or not. You don't always have to like it. You don't always have to agree with it, but you got to admit, we're getting more information than we did before.
For sure. The best information, the biggest information.
It's because I'm the greatest. It's because this past ridiculous administration never told you anything and couldn't do interviews because Sleepy Joe probably wasn't
competent. He never gave information because he didn't have any.
But
But I have lots of information.
I have the greatest,
the biggest
social media
bag of information
platform there ever was.
Let's see. They lied about Pat Tillman too. Krista says our taxes fund the military, so there's some reason. There's a reason some things need to be kept at a minimum. And Dennis says, and the inauguration was held indoors. The shiny dangling thing is the strategy. I want their feet held to the fire on the Epstein files. I am with Julie. You and I agree. I don't care who's on that list. If you're on it, you need to go to prison. And every Friday, I make a reminder that lets everybody know that there are predators still walking the streets because the government doesn't have a spine enough to do the right, just thing because of the consequences. And they've just got to wise up and know that maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the only one out there that hasn't moved on from the fact that we have predators that we're being ruled by right now.
I don't think you are. I think people like what we're doing right now. It'll come back around. It'll get brought up and we'll go, man, that's really shady. Why don't we have, oh my God, there's a car on fire. There'll always be something to get us arguing about something else that will just, okay, well, maybe next Friday we'll talk about Epstein.
Well, when we point these distractions, it's meant for everybody listening to this to know, don't be susceptible to it. You got to be, you don't have to go to the conspiracy theories that I like to go to. Mm-hmm. You could just be critical and listen to something and just doubt the fact that it might not be true. And if it survives the scrutiny of you saying whether or not this is true or not, then you can live with it. But if you're like, all right, so all of the Democrats came out and said that this senator, right, was taken down. He was removed from the room because he opposed Kristi Noem, right? That's the narrative. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, I want to know if that's true. I want that to be true. Let's see if this is authoritarian administration that just wanted to silence opposition. And then you watch the video and you're like, okay, well, the guy walked in and he caused a stir.
He was yelling.
Yeah, was yelling. Maybe they just arrested him because they thought he was a protester. And then you keep digging and keep challenging your own beliefs. And if it survives, yes or don't be an advocate for your beliefs, be an adversary for your beliefs. You can only survive your beliefs or survive the criticism if you actually challenge your own beliefs to see if it's right or not. If you just want to believe it, then all you are is a delusional person that wants to give you sort of like self-credit for being right. And I don't want to have debates with people who want to believe something so bad they want to overlook, other evidence.
For sure. And I mean, that's human nature. I've heard that when presented with evidence to the contrary of what you were believing, you will actually dig your heels in harder than accept that you might be wrong. And unfortunately, that's human nature. And it's harder now because once you do start looking at information that is one way, if you're doing research online, you're now served things in that same vein. You now have to actively seek out other sources and what other people are saying. And one thing that frustrated me is when I attempted to do that with people and I'd say, hey, could you tell me a little bit more about this? What is it you're seeing? Give me some sources, give me some whatever. And then it's met with anger and they don't. They're like, I can't even believe you would question. Oh, you're just for the other side. And it's like, you're not giving me anything. You're not giving me anything. Oh, it's just because you're this and you're that. And I'm like, that shows me you don't have anything. And if you don't have anything, that's going to then.
Well, let me point this out because Trump is vulnerable. Okay. He can be beaten. And when you're sizing up an enemy, you go after whatever the heel is, right?
Yeah.
The Achilles heel is what you go after. But the Democrats stick to the narrative on the thing he's not vulnerable to and totally miss the thing he is. So we use what's that dude that got deported? I forget his name. He got deported. He was that dude that was in New York that got deported without due process, and they were striking him as the dad and the whatever.
The Maryland dad or something?
Yeah, Maryland dad. Not New York.
Yeah.
So anyway, the vulnerability here is you've got two issues. Whether this guy was a good dude, right? Or was due process followed? Now, there's one of these two things that I would agree with you on, that you should follow due process. And if you didn't follow due process, you need to undo it, right? And do the due process. If you make a mistake, and I think they could have done this nicely before he was deported, do a little bit more due diligence to make sure that he went before a judge, did it the proper way, and was out of here. But the Democrats, all they did was they doubled down on that this was just an authoritarian move. And they missed the thing
a family man.
Right. They missed the what was true, and they went after the thing that could be heavily argued against. Now, do they do that on purpose? I have no idea.
Yeah, they missed the opportunity to take emotion out of it and say, look, he may or may not be a bad guy. He may or may not have beat his wife. He may be here illegally. I don't know, but here we are, America, and this is America's process. Follow the process. And could have left it at that. And I think a lot of people would have said, well, can't really argue against that. But when the argument is, but it's a nice guy, but they weren't causing any problems and they didn't deserve to leave and they were friendly and they wanted to work and it's like, you're making it about emotion instead of factual information.
And I think that's why they miss it so abruptly every single time.
I agree.
Because the drama is most important. And more dramatic means that the middle part of the people, like that space that I was in yesterday where I was listening to all the Palestinian supporters that had the Palestinian flags and they were passionate. They had good arguments. So let's just say I wasn't Joe. And I was just a normal person that did not have any kind of feelings about it. And I just walked into that space. I could leave that space thinking, yeah, I kind of support based on those arguments. I'm for Palestine now. So they're playing to the 80% of people who don't listen to anything, right? And are swayable based on the dramatic effect. If I say Trump's a tyrant, right, I can buy all of those low information voters and supporters just with the dramatic version. I don't want an authoritarian as my president. He must be one. They made a reasoned argument that he's an authoritarian. That's as far as I'm going to dig. And now I have 80% of the people supporting my cause. It's a good strategy if you're just compelling low information, low IQ supporters into your cause.
I think it's almost like they want that strategy because it's those highly emotionally driven people that can be the loudest and most rambunctious and most visible. Whereas I think the people that are just looking at facts and thinking, well, that doesn't make any sense.
That's right.
But that's what actually happened, tend to sort of be more reserved. Not all, some.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably why that's their strategy is
it works.
We can make
it's
more
effective.
noise.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Dennis says, Trump's bad, Joe. Don't you get it? Yeah, that's but go poll 100 people just off your street and ask them if Trump bad. And I bet you get my 75-80% number that people who, and if what Kelin would do is she would ask them why, and they would stammer stutter about, they don't even know why they think it's bad. They were just told that it was supposed to. So if you can capture 80% of the support by just floating a dramatic scenario where someone's a Nazi or someone's bad or someone's this, and you can capture all of them, why would you not do it?
Yeah.
So let's see.
Carter, I think it was, did say he wants to hear your Russian accent again.
I forget it now. I have to do it authentically because when I try to do it on purpose, it's not going to come out well. I have to get in Vladimir Danyi's head a little bit. So that'll come up maybe. Dennis says the only currency they know is victimhood, and it is a strong currency for sure. Penny said most Dems just argue for due process, not emotional.
I disagree. Okay, maybe I don't disagree. Maybe I'll be honest. I don't know if you could say most Dems argue for due process. That may be the thing. The louder Dems argue emotion. You can't convince me otherwise. The loudest Dems are arguing the emotional appeal, not anything that makes sense.
Okay, so here's the deal. I'll combine our two. Okay, I agree that they are saying due process.
Yes.
Without knowing what due process is. And even if due process is given, we'll still say they need due process. So the delusion of and ignoring, like, the car's on fire. No, it's not. I am arguing that the car is not on fire when it's clearly on fire.
Yeah.
So if you took a person that was offered due process, they would still say that the person's not being offered due process.
Yeah.
So they're making the argument that is the gaslight argument that they will never say that someone, like, there will never be enough due process that is given to someone for them to be satisfied that due process was given to them.
So let's say somebody is in our country and they were there under certain guidelines. You have to have this documentation and you have to have this. And if you do not, you are out of here. And some time goes by and they never get those things. And maybe some more time goes by and they still don't have those things. And then one day, so much time has gone by that there's now a warrant out for their arrest. They arrest them and they kick them out of the country. Was due process followed, or what are the other due process steps they're looking for?
Why'd you put due process in quotes?
Because everybody says, where's the due process? And I'm like, wasn't the process, here is our agreement. You do this or you're gone. You didn't do it. You're gone.
So when
are they supposed to have more?
When Krista or Julie say due process wasn't given, right?
Yeah.
I hear what's supposed to be is whatever process was formulated for their situation, they were given. The process that was due the person. When they say due process, they mean that if you take a person and you put them through our court system and you give them a jury of their peers and they allow them for appeal, is a due process, I would call it an undue process, where you're taking a level of process that is not typically given to a person and wanting an amplified process that makes it a harder standard for deportation.
Yeah. Like if they say,
what is due?
Yeah. If they say you were here under the agreement that you do this and you did not, do they then have to get a court date to go before a judge where the judge then says, you're here under the agreement that you did this and you did not? Gavel, goodbye. Is that what they want? Is that what they're like? Well, they were under an agreement. They broke their agreement. But before we can kick them out, they have to go into a courtroom and again be told you broke your agreement and then get sent off.
So to me, think of like someone who is investigating you. due process would be, I can't enter your home until I get a warrant. In order to get a warrant, I need to have a reason for getting a warrant. A judge has to agree with me that warrant. That's the due process. You do things in a certain order, in a certain way that allows you then to take somebody's liberty away. I can't come in your house without the warrant. That's to protect you from me. But if I satisfy that part of the process. So let's just say in immigration that let's just say you have a visa and the visa says, hey, you know what? You got to follow all the rules. The minute that you don't follow the rules, the next line of the process says, what happens to people who don't follow the terms of a green card? Well, are they immediately dispatched? Or do they go before a panel? Do you have to have just a judge saying that he agrees with you and then they're deported? What is the due process for that circumstance? And that's what I'm saying. Like, I think due process means that we think everybody who breaks a rule goes before a judge and, goes in front of a jury. And I just don't think that's the case.
Yeah. That's my biggest question is when they're saying these people aren't getting what they are owed legally, I'd love to know what they mean exactly.
And I also don't agree that what due process is, that if you're not here illegally, that due process does not apply to you. Okay, that also, I think that's your opinion.
There's an emotional appeal. Yeah, that people say you didn't care about our laws and processes when you came in.
Right.
Why would you deserve them now?
Right. But the process keeps things safe so that if you're upset about something and you go to a restaurant and they overcharged you, right? Mm-hmm. Now, what you think is you should be able to jump the counter and go get your money out of the cash register, and that would be a just thing. But the due process is you can't just do that by breaking the law yourself and doing the wrong thing. Even if the ends are just, you have to follow the due process. So if you file a grievance, file a report, go to the police, that's the pathway you take to remedying something that is unjust. And due process would be whatever that is. If it's the wrong process, if you don't agree that it's too hard to enter this country or too hard to dispatch and dismiss people from this country, cool, change the process. But you got to stick to whatever process exists in order to have a civilization that's not anarchy.
Yeah. Yeah. Amplified process that matches the emotional reaction of the left.
Yeah, but two wrongs like that, I mean, it really does not help your situation. There has to be somebody who's sticking to the rule of law, even if it's an inconvenient rule of law. You've got to set and model what kind of behaviors you want everybody to follow. Do you want senators, because of who they are, to be able to attack the podium and air their grievances in the middle of a press conference? Because if you do that, then what's the difference between a reporter doing the exact same thing? You got to have a rule. That's the due process. If you want to set a meeting with Kristi Noem, right? You call her office and schedule a meeting. Or wait till a question and answer period. That's due process.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's laid out and it is what it is. It doesn't have to be what you think it should be. It could simply be, if somebody has a warrant for their arrest, they went through a process to get that warrant.
Yes.
Is that
and on the receiving end of a warrant, what's the process of being handed a warrant and says, I have a warrant to search your house? You know what you do? You get the frick out of the way and let them do the warrant, right?
Yeah.
You know what would be stifling the due process is trying to blocking streets. When you get pulled over and they say, let me see your license and registrations. That is due process. He walks up to the car. He asks for a license. Due process would be handing them what they asked for.
And guess what? It's required that you have those on you. So if you say no, or I don't have them, you're now in the wrong. And when you get kicked out of your car and potentially can't drive again, don't say, well, but you didn't let me go to court and you didn't let me do this and you didn't let me do that. In that moment, you just arrested me. Yes, it was. I'm allowed to ask for this. You are required to show me. And in that moment, you broke the process.
And that's why I don't trust the whole Democrats. We love due process things, because in every other avenue where there is a due process, they push and break the rules of the due process. So the First Amendment, you're allowed to express yourself, right? Mm-hmm. What's the due process? You're allowed to get a permit for a place, hold your signs, stay on the sidewalk, don't burn cars, don't break windows, whatever.
Yeah.
But we want to take non-due process and pull it into the expression of rights. And so it gives everybody this license to go beyond what due process is. And you can't disagree with due process sometimes and then agree with it others. Either you're a due process follower or you're not.
Yeah. Julie says Trump has taken away protected status mid-process, then arrests them when documents just became null and void.
So, I mean, that's an emotional appeal. If someone's all of a sudden decided to follow due process, right, and they haven't yet, well, your timing's off and you should have done that before. So interrupting what would eventually be someone conforming to what due process is.
Yeah.
Right. If you did, so you're here illegally for 17 years. Right?
Yeah.
You think they're on to you, so you all of a sudden stop breaking the rules. So I was speeding for 20 miles. I see a cop and I slam on the brakes, right? Slow down when I'm in front of the cop. And then he pulls me over anyway. And then I argue with the officer and I'm like, no, when I was in front of you, I was in the midst of slowing down. And the officer is going to say, I don't care. The plane got you speeding. You were speeding for 20 miles before you got here. Just because you were about to not be speeding does not negate the fact that you were speeding.
Oh, yeah. And they're like, you're required to have this documentation up to date and correct by June 1st.
Yeah. Did you know before now that you should have?
And then on June 20th.
It's so dumb that we're even talking.
Then on June 20th, you decide, oh, crap. Better go get in line to get this document updated.
I was just about to. Trust me.
They arrested me in line updating my documents.
Oh, my God.
That were due weeks ago. Krista says, I think it's needed because they have children, families, etc. So that needs to be sorted out.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless the people that are arresting have warrants for big crimes. And that's what I was promised, was that these people that they were going after had warrants, and for other things like domestic abuse and drug offenses and murder and rape and all of that stuff. So the people you're seeing disappearing right now are guilty of more than just being having illegal status.
Yeah.
So and the illegal people put their families in jeopardy by doing the things that made it necessary to get the warrant in the first place. Now, we might have an argument down the road of people who, once they broke the law, immigration law, to get here, have caused no problem and just paid their taxes. And what do we do with them? And I think by the time we've eliminated the criminals, we'll have a much less aggressive approach, giving these people a chance to become legal in a way, because they've proven that they bring a skill set to the table and they haven't broken the laws.
But then here's what needs to happen. If you have somebody, you came here illegally, but you've caused no problems, you're a contributing member to society, you want to go ahead and become a citizen, fine. We'll let you stay, but here's what you're going to do. You're going to do this, you're going to do this, and you're going to do this by this date. Show us you can do that, and we will allow you to stay.
Yep.
If you get to that date and you have not fulfilled these requirements,
immediate,
and you're gone, that's not, we're booting out innocent families.
No, that would be due process. That is the agreement that you signed on to.
They didn't get their due process.
The stipulation, 1 second after the date that you get this, you are no longer a citizen and you get deported. That would be due process.
Yep. Yep.
Let's see. ICE is not required to have a warrant. I disagree. I think that they get a warrant. It's a different type of process to get a warrant, but they do have to get the judiciary, a judge, to be able to sign off on taking someone and deporting. They and again, the emotional Democrats want you to believe that they're pulling random people who look a certain way and immediately deporting them. I don't think that's happening. You're going to have to give me an example where they're randomly, and you don't use the mistakes that may have been made where, identity was,
mistaken.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where they literally just said, hey, we got a quota to fill, and we're driving around and we see this, truck full of painters, and one of them's got to be deportable, and they just pull you over for that and deport. I just don't think that's happening.
Yeah, they're not like just profiling.
But if I'm wrong, then give me an example of somebody. I was watching a thing. I think it was in California, where a truck full of roofers. There were 6 roofers. They were pulled over, and they were all taken into custody. And the charge was, again, the media's charge was that these were random people. They never committed a crime and whatever, but they're concealing the reason that they were stopped. And anytime the media doesn't tell you why they were stopped and under what premise they were incarcerated, you know that that's the story that you're being hidden from. They want you to feel that these are just innocent people going to work. And then when the charges are filed and they do it, you're like, oh, they were slinging meth, or they had people
like the pregnant woman. Oh, they pushed me.
Exactly.
I got hurt, and and now I'm in the hospital with no mention of why ICE was there to begin with.
Exactly.
Yeah. What is kettling? Check out the kettling, Julie says, that is happening in LA. Kettling? Kettling. I don't know what that is, Julie. You'll have to enlighten us. Kettling.
Oh, yeah.
Police crowd control tactic.
So what they do, and I watched this go down. This is actually a pretty brilliant maneuver. So when it comes to large masses of people, what they do is big crowds are hard to manage. So what they use police lines, and they walk the police lines down, and they split groups into smaller, more manageable sizes.
Yeah.
So they might. They did it on the freeway, by the way. So there was a group of people on the freeway, and there was a divider, and half of them were on one part of the divider. So they snuck the police between the dividers. So then there was a group of people on the back side of the police and the front side, and they walked from the divider this way and started dumping people off the exit of the freeway. So now you had maybe 1,000 people all on the freeway. Now you have two groups of 500. Then another group will split the group even further and walk them down two separate streets. Now you have 250. Now those smaller groups are less likely to get violent. They're less numerous, so they can have a less chance of attacking police. So it's basically a numbers
divide
strategy.
And conquer.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now the kettling is I think it was the mayor of Los Angeles that when they were kettled, they were pushed down streets that maybe didn't have an exit, so they were almost trapped in the back part. And they said that made people feel contained and uncomfortable. And her theory was that it makes more violent because they think that they're going to be assailed and, dumped hot tar on or something like that. So I believe that kettling is a true a good police strategy.
And now the victims are, you made me, who came out to riot and get in someone else's way on a freeway, feel uncomfortable. And that's not okay. I'm allowed to get in their way and make them late and make them stuck in traffic and cause problems and destruction. But the moment you just back me up and now I don't feel like standing here, it makes me uncomfortable standing here. We're supposed to feel bad for you? Well, if that's the case. If that's the case.
In this situation, like if it were somebody got a permit and they had a couple thousand people on the town square to do their thing, you're never going to kettle people, right? But if you have let's just say you had a football game and you had a bunch of people rushing out of the stadium after somebody won or lost, and they're going to cause problems. And if you let them be a big group, right, it's not an assembly. It's not a legal group of people that are there in the first place. So you're managing and mitigating the destruction that can happen because of that group. So splitting them into smaller groups and putting down neighborhoods that they can't do any kind of damage, instead of the commercial zone, you take them down the industrial zone. I mean, if it were legal, then it would probably be managed differently. But you can't ultimately give a pass to people who are there illegally, and then somehow they use a strategy that's a little bit meaner than they want to deal with.
Yeah. I like, Mandy says, the gaslighting of these two is ridiculous. It is not illegal to be in this country undocumented. It is a civil misdemeanor.
Okay. What's
a misdemeanor?
Okay. Mandy, you're just freaking wrong. You're just freaking wrong.
I really think that's inaccurate.
It is very inaccurate. And I heard the same stories, and you see Democrat politicians saying that it is treated as a misdemeanor within certain municipalities. And
what's a misdemeanor?
Misdemeanor is a lower tier of crime. You have felonies.
Right. A lower tier of what?
Crimes.
Right.
Like jaywalking, for instance.
Which is
a misdemeanor.
It's a lower tier of what?
Crimes.
Right. Is crime legal?
So I'll make the argument for it. Do you want people just to be be incarcerated for jaywalking? No. So the response to different crimes has a proportional response of due process, right? So you get a ticket for speeding. You get a ticket
if you jaywalked and got hit by a car.
Yeah. you were committing a crime.
Is that now a little more elevated than just jaywalking?
That you committed a crime? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's still, I mean,
the reason it is regulated is because it's a dangerous action that you don't want to have.
Right.
But the punishment for a crime, right, is to dissuade people from committing the actual crime.
Yeah.
So the argument of, since it's only a misdemeanor, then what? What is the argument with there?
Yeah. It's only a misdemeanor, so they should
not do anything,
go about
or
their
they
day?
should I don't know what. All right, make the argument for it. If we're just gaslighting it, make the actual argument for, if you just because they don't enforce jaywalking and just because they don't enforce misdemeanors doesn't mean that there's not a reason for it to be a crime in the first place.
Yeah.
Julie says 75% of those that have been disappeared are not criminals. This is why Trump is backing off from worker and hospitality workers. You're going to have to give me that in writing. I don't believe that they have been disappeared and they are not criminals.
Why are we saying that lately? I've been hearing that more and more. Oh, these people have been disappeared.
So here's what happens. When ICE comes and has a deportation order and a warrant, they will go up to a Home Depot. They will identify you. They will grab you and they will put you in the vehicle and take you off. That is disappearing. So the I don't know. What do you want them to do? Do you want a public display where they walk you out of the courthouse and make everybody see, versus taking you wherever you are because they have a warrant for you not to be in public anymore?
What's the difference between disappearing and getting arrested?
There's no difference. It's a dramatic way of saying disappearing.
I was like, that's the emotional push again. These people are being disappeared. Like out of thin air, never to be heard from again, and nobody knows where they are.
It's at the same level as if I came to your job or I tricked you into coming to a fake, immigration hearing only to arrest you. And then the people can't see that it's happening because there's a mistrust that it's happening. Like Julie said, that they feel like 75% of the people were just innocents that were taken because they were of a certain persuasion or a certain ethnicity. And you might believe that's happening, and that's fine if you can find that it's happening. All of us would be interested in making sure that innocent people were getting caught up in this, but I don't agree with it.
Yeah, because it sounds like an innocent person just vanished and nobody has explanations. That's like, I like the phrase. The phrase is been disappeared and unalived or brutal. Yeah, like they're meant to be agenda pushing, like
eliciting the Dramocrats, eliciting an emotional response. They did this to people yesterday. They were on public property. They were surrounded for 2 hours until curfew and arrested. Wait, hold on. So they were arrested after curfew. So what's a curfew? Let's discuss this. So if the mayor says, all right, 8:00 curfew, go home, do not be out here after curfew.
Yeah.
And then you're there after curfew and are arrested. Were you arrested because of who you are? Or you arrested because I said you were going to be arrested after curfew?
Or is she saying they surrounded them so they couldn't leave, and then the moment curfew hit, arrested them? Is that what she means? They were surrounded for 2 hours until curfew, then arrested. So
that's a stretch.
Like like the agents physically blocked them, wouldn't let them leave, and then arrested them for being there.
Again, you are going to have to make that case because yes, none of us want people to be held hostage so they couldn't leave if they wanted to, just so the officers could arrest them.
Yeah.
Do not believe that is the case unless what are you going on? It might be a suspicion and you might not want that to happen, but was it happening? What's your evidence? Like what makes you say that? ICE officers, while often referring to them as warrants, are actually using administrative warrants and not judicial. That's the due process that isn't. So if it's not necessary to get a judicial warrant, if the process, administrative process wasn't followed. So if you go, you're on probation and you then have to go see a parole officer. And if you don't show up for your parole officer, do you then get the luxury of going before a judge and pleading your case? or just because you didn't meet with your parole officer, an automatic warrant is issued and you go back to jail. That's what she's saying. Like, maybe the due process is not that they have to go in front of the judge again. The agreement was broken, so you automatically have an issued warrant. That's again.
Yeah.
It is on video. Look it up. All right, I'm going to look it up.
We're looking it up.
All right, you keep talking because I'm going to find this.
Yeah, I mean, unless I misunderstood what she was saying, is it basically, so they got a warrant for something not related to immigration and then arrested them under immigration issues. And that's not right. Maybe is that her point? Briefly being surrounded by police. Is that it? Group of protesters allowed to continue
after being surrounded. No, that's not it.
There it is. Press LA curfew crackdown. Police swarm protesters and press as LA curfew.
Well, that's
crackdown.
after the curfew ended, and that's them being arrested. I want the surrounding charge. You're gonna have to, if you can find an article, I will look it up. But yeah, you'll have to. There was YouTube videos, so if I have to watch a long stretch, I'll have to do it after the show. But we'll see. Like, and this is one of those things. Like, what does that mean? Like, they locked arms around protesters, so it was you were not able to leave your cornered den, or the police were there and you felt threatened, so you didn't leave,
or the police were there. They weren't doing anything and they weren't saying anything to you. So you just stayed too. Hey, they don't have an issue with us. They're letting us be. So we'll stay. And then curfew hits and they're like, gotcha. Could that be the case too? Where they're like, wait a minute. You were letting us be here. You were letting us do this. You didn't say anything. And they're like, no, until curfew hit.
Yeah. So I'd like to see the level of being detained and being surrounded.
Yeah.
Because if cops were just surrounding a group, that's what they're supposed to do in these deals, is keep an eye on what the protesters. If you felt that you couldn't escape the clutches of the surrounded cops, I'm going to disagree with that part. And I think if you were like, oh, look, curfews, I'm going home, and you left, I think they would have let you.
And what's so interesting too, well, Julie says, watch it, Joe. They were told they were not permitted to leave.
Okay. I'll watch it. I'll watch it.
What's interesting though, is that like, none of us are there. None of us saw it. None of us experienced it. It's based on the media source you see, the angle you see. You know, like there was a lot of arguments back when George Floyd passed away. There was one camera angle of a guy recording that looked like one thing happened. And then there's a longer video from a different angle that tells a totally different story. And so all of us are getting bits and pieces of information and arguing like we know something, where I don't know. I'd love to see more people have a little bit of an open mind of, hey, this looked like this happened, but maybe it didn't, rather than people that are like, I know they did this, when it's like, you don't though. You don't know what happened. And what makes more sense? Like, if you're a judge and you're hearing a case and you weren't there and you're just listening to both sides of the story, ultimately you have to go, what makes more sense? That somebody did something and they faced a consequence, or somebody came in for no reason. I feel like being a jerk today and I did this to you.
I'm still contemplating the surrounding thing, because I'm let's just pretend that happened, and you just had cops super annoyed with a group of people that are not supposed to be there anyway, right? They're assembling in a place and they really want to arrest these people. And so what they do is they create an intimidating force that, all I got to do is wear you down, and they're like, hey, dudes, I'm going to arrest you in about 10 minutes. I hope you stay right there so I could finally take some of my aggression out and arrest you. Like, if they did that, that's an asshole move for sure.
Yeah.
But what would be wrong in that?
To me, the only thing wrong is if you physically can't leave. If you know I'm going to get arrested if I don't leave, I'm trying to leave and you won't let me leave. I'm trying not to break the law and you won't let me leave. That's totally different than I'm waiting and watching and I can't wait to arrest you. as soon as you give me a reason.
Well, it's then would be two assholes, right? And when
Yeah.
two assholes do asshole things, I don't feel sad for either one of them, right?
Yeah.
So somebody breaks in your house, right? And the law says that in order for you want to shoot this person that broke into your house, you really want them. But you can't shoot them unless they steal something, right? So you're like, why don't you pick up that TV and say that you want to take it? And then you take it and I shoot you, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to, so I did an asshole thing so I can get to shoot you. But then you got to go back and say, why were you in the house in the first place? Like you could have saved yourself this whole thing by not being a house in the first place. So both of you are jerks. And I want to feel bad for you that you just got blasted, but then I want to feel that you're an asshole for baiting someone into getting shot, but you're still both assholes.
It's like the I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you.
Right.
And then when the person you're doing that to goes, get out of my face, you're the jerk. You hit them first.
Neither a victim. You were there and weren't supposed to be and pushed up against the whatever. And you're a jerk because your job is to protect the city and the population and mitigate the damage that these people can do. Both of you could be nice by, you can say leave and we say okay, right?
Yeah.
This could say, anyway. I'm frustrated about today's show.
Oh,
really
and
am.
we're almost out of time.
I know.
Too.
Good. Let's be done with it. All right. So have a happy Friday the 13th. I hope the Israeli and Iranian thing ratchets down and they find some kind of peaceful end to it. I hope Padilla apologizes for being a dick to Kristi Noem and not rushing the podium and promising that when it's question and answer time, he'll ask those questions. I hope the Dramocrats decide to get off their narratives and be a little bit more reasonable so it's easier to solve problems. And I hope women and men put their strengths and weaknesses in check and work together and cooperate so they can get the best of each of them.
And come Monday, we have world peace.
World peace.
World peace.
Amen. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. This is original Youngstown content. Feel free to share our videos and tell your friends about us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us